This is Democracy Now! I'm Amy Goodman. After nearly 200 days of protests calling for justice for Breonna Taylor, the 26-year-old African-American woman shot to death in her own apartment by plainclothes Louisville officers serving a no-knock warrant, new evidence is raising troubling questions about the integrity of the crime scene after the raid and the investigation that followed. On Thursday, a grand jury failed to charge any of the 3 white Louisville police officers involved in the killing of Breonna Taylor with her death. Kentucky's governor, Louisville's mayor, have joined calls to release the grand jury transcripts. Vice News has obtained body camera footage from Louisville Metro Police Department officers and SWAT team members from the night of the raid that raises questions about the investigation. On Saturday, Vice posted a clip that shows former Detective Brett Hankison, one of the 3 officers who fired their guns and the only one now facing charges. He's facing charges of first-degree wanton endangerment for gunshots, not that hit Breonna Taylor's apartment or her, but that hit a neighboring apartment. In the footage, Hankison can be seen entering Taylor's apartment while investigators are there examining the crime scene. At one point in the footage, Hankison asks about a shell casing on the ground, saying, "That's theirs?" before an unidentified officer tells him to leave until the PIU, the Public Integrity Unit, arrives. This is the clip.
That's theirs? No, it's ours, it looks like. Theirs is in there. But I'd back out until they get PIU in here. So. I just didn't know if there were any guns visible. We did not see any.
Video footage also shows Detective Hankison lingers in Taylor's apartment even after he's told to leave the scene of the active investigation of an officer-involved shooting in which he is one of the officers. It also shows that none of the officers who were part of the raid got separated or paired with an escort. This comes as a ballistics report from the Kentucky State Police was unable to determine that Taylor's boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, shot Officer Jonathan Mattingly, as he has been claimed to have done by the Kentucky Attorney General, or if Mattingly was hit by friendly fire. During the raid, Walker fired a warning shot at the front door and said he believed it was a home invasion. He didn't know who was raiding his apartment. He even called the police to ask for help. He has a license to carry firearms. Meanwhile, the footage from the body cameras appears to corroborate several parts of Walker's testimony. Walker says when officers arrested him, they threatened to set a dog on him and told him he'd spend the rest of his life in jail. This is a clip from the body camera footage of his arrest.
Walk straight back or I'll send this dog on you. Walk back to my voice. Walk back or I'll send this dog. Walk back to me. Keep on walking. Walk now. Walk. Walk back to me. Watch out, harder. Walk back to me now. Now. Take your hands in the air. Get down on your knees. Watch that, man. Get down on your knees. Don't look back. Don't look back. Put your hands on your head.
For more, we're joined by part of the team that obtained this footage. Roberto Ferdman is a Vice News correspondent. His latest co-authored piece, headlined "New Bodycam Footage Raises Questions About Breonna Taylor Death Investigation." He's just back from Louisville, joining us from New York. Welcome, Roberto, to Democracy Now! Tell us who is shouting this right now, and talk about the significance of this footage. I think most people listening or watching right now are saying, wait a second, I thought there was no footage, that the officers who engaged in this no-knock raid did not have body cam cameras.
So you're right. From the very beginning, the police department and the city have maintained that none of the officers who executed the search warrant were wearing body cameras because they're part of a unit called the Criminal Interdiction Division, and they often perform their duties in plain clothes, as they were that night. And up until then, because since the policy has been changed, they didn't have to wear body cameras. That being said, there are many officers and SWAT team members who arrive on scene immediately afterward. And all of those officers, most of them are uniformed, have to wear body cameras, had to at the time, and were wearing body cameras. So we acquired about 45 different body cameras. I mean, it's many, many hours of footage. Some of these are 30 minutes long, or many of them are. And we sifted through those. The video of where you see Kenneth Walker being arrested, walking backwards, that's the body camera of a canine officer who comes over to kind of rush Walker to walk backwards faster. The other body cameras from one of the SWAT team members, there are probably about 10 others, and we're working toward more stories at the moment to help folks show what can be gleaned from those videos and from other documents as well.
Explain who's screaming at him and who also was captured on camera saying to him, Kenny Walker, this is Breonna's boyfriend, screaming at him, you're going to spend the rest of your time, rest of your life in jail, and threatening to sick the dog on him?
So the officer who's threatening to sick the dog on him is an LMPD officer whose last name I believe is Nemono. The person who tells Kenny that he's going to spend the rest of his life in jail is Brett Hankeson, one of the 3 officers LMPD says fired their weapon that night, and who was fired over the summer. I believe it was at the beginning of July. But Hankeson is not just the officer who tells Kenny that he's going to spend the rest of his life in jail. He's also the officers, as you pointed out, who can be seen inside of the apartment. He walks up to the front door immediately after SWAT clears the apartment, leaves, and then comes back and steps into the apartment. None of this is supposed to happen. In fact, what is supposed to happen is very far from it. All the officers who are involved in any critical incident, especially officer-involved shootings, are supposed to be separated immediately and paired with what's called a peer support officer, someone who brings them over, puts them, for instance, like in the back of a car so that they don't speak to other people, so that they don't involve themselves in the crime scene. But, these things don't seem to have been enforced, these policies, and it is so flagrant in some instances that one of the officers, Mike Campbell, he's one of the 7 who executed the raid, actually ends up interviewing neighbors, witnesses, and not only can be seen on video walking down the stairs, having come from upstairs in that unit to speak to neighbors there, he tells investigators in an interview that he does it, and they don't say anything of it. They don't flinch. We haven't heard back from the department on what they make of that, or why they haven't pointed that out, or why the officer hasn't been punished.
So I want to go to this point about the witnesses. When Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron announced that no charges would be brought in direct connection with Breonna Taylor's death, he emphasized the officers who carried out the search warrant did identify themselves at Taylor's door and noted there was a witness who corroborated the officer's version of events. This is Cameron.
Evidence shows that officers both knocked and announced their presence at the apartment. The officers' statements about their announcement are corroborated by an independent witness who was near in proximity to apartment 4. In other words, the warrant was not served as a no-knock warrant. When officers were unable to get anyone to answer or open the door to apartment 4, the decision was made to breach the door.
So that's the Kentucky Attorney General. But according to audio and documents obtained by your news organization, Vice News, that same witness changed his story in months following the raid. In this clip Vice published this weekend, we hear the original answer given by the only witness who claims to have heard the police identify themselves that night.
Did you ever hear anyone identify themselves as police?
No, nobody identified himself.
No, nobody identified himself. This is the witness, is that right, that the Attorney General identified as the one who said the police did identify themselves as police, Roberto?
This is the witness, yes. This is the key witness. As we and other news organizations have pointed out, us as early as July, we spoke to over a dozen neighbors, including neighbors within that unit. We didn't speak to Mr. Sarpy at the time. We tried, but failed in reaching him. None of the neighbors that we spoke to, including one who lived in the unit, say that they heard police announce themselves. And the Attorney General hangs quite a bit on them announcing themselves. The importance of this, even if they did have permission for a no-knock warrant, is that when you execute a no-knock warrant, it's important that you immediately breach the door and go in. Because if you're knocking loudly on someone's door and you're not announcing yourself, that creates a very dangerous scenario where someone is alerted to people being at the door. They don't know whom it is. I think that anyone can agree that it's fair to assume it could be an intruder, as Kenneth Walker says he believed it was. But the Attorney General only presents what Mr. Sarpy says in the second interview that's recorded with the Public Integrity Unit at LMPD. He does not share that the first time they speak with Mr. Sarpy, which is on March 21st, a little over a week after the raid that killed Breonna Taylor, he has a different story. He says that he did not hear anyone. He says he did not hear anyone announce themselves. The only way he could tell that they were police was because he saw the word police on the vests, the bulletproof vests that they were wearing. And this is significant. I mean, especially given how little information has been shared with the public before we started releasing stories, and the way in which all of this was represented or presented to the public by the Attorney General's office last Wednesday, when he shared the result of the long-awaited investigation.
You also wrote a piece headlined, "Initial police report didn't conclude Breonna Taylor's boyfriend shot a cop in the leg." And this is key. I mean, even if he did, you have this situation where he didn't know it was cops. He was calling the police saying, "Help us." But what about this?
So this is important because it's a theme that the Attorney General brings up himself in explaining that they don't know for sure whether or not any of Brett Hankison's bullets hit Breonna Taylor. There were differences in ballistics reports, and he says that therefore it is inconclusive. That's part of why they were not able to charge Brett Hankison with one endangerment for bullets into Breonna Taylor's apartment for endangering Breonna Taylor. It is unclear to us, and we broke this story on Friday, why then he also did not present, why he presented Kenneth Walker hitting or firing the shot that hit Mattingly as inconclusive as well. He said in the press conference that it's because the bullet that was recovered was a 9mm. But the difference between a 9mm and what is normally shot with a .40 caliber weapon is very, very small, and the bullet was mangled. So we believe that it's inconclusive, and that the public deserves more information to understand what we know for sure and what we don't, and why things
Roberto
have been presented the way
Ferdman, I
they
want
have
to
been.
say thank you so much. We're going to continue to follow this. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks for joining us.